And down here in the bottom left-hand side of the map, representing the Shopify Rebellion, she is the Queen of Blades. She is Scarlett. Fun fact, by the way, about Scarlett, if you don't know this, as you know, a lot of the people watching, they get to just watch Scarlett online through the streams and stuff. But if you ever are in a lobby with her or anything in StarCraft, you will know that she loves making clans that all have clan tags that are complaining about Protoss. Or just like, what's the thing that she hates right now? Adepts? She hates Adepts? It's like Adepts are OP is like her clan name. And it just, she loves doing that kind of stuff. She doesn't actually have anything like that right now, Paulo.
Yeah, that's gotta be scary. Adepted was one of her tags, right? And she actually criticized Astrea at some point for not switching to Adepts fast enough, and got punished once upon a time because Astrea did go for Adepts when he was least expected to.
He literally saw her clan tag and decided to go for Adepts and beat her with it. Yeah. It was definitely, I mean, it's definitely a thing for Scarlett where she loves having that. But Cats, if she doesn't have a clan tag, does that mean she's completely overpowered Protoss? There's nothing that scares her about Protoss right now.
That's gotta be her ultimate form. I mean, and this happens against Terran too, right? Like she sometimes says stuff like, "Oh, 2 racks, like it works every time," or stuff like that. And then you have like players like Massa doing 2 racks every time, and getting maps off of her seemingly every time. So. Yeah, I think she's got to stop broadcasting her weaknesses, right? Like, maybe. But maybe that's what she's doing now. Maybe she's just not telling them more.
That might be very well it. But I do want to quickly note, this game, we did already have a slightly interesting opening because it was a Nexus first from Astrea. Scarlett, of course, only going to be finding about this much, much later on. So she does make a few lings, just 2 lings to move across the map and stuff, but Astrea has effectively already gotten away, quote unquote, with the Nexus first opening at this point.
Yeah, he's going to follow up with 2 Adepts starting at the same time as his gateway finishes promptly and perfectly. He also has double Chrono Boost available. So these 2 Adepts, in spite of the Nexus first, are pretty well timed for Astrea. They could be pretty dangerous, and he will have a very good economy behind it as well. Some of it at the expense of maybe delaying the tech a little bit. He is going to follow up with a Stalker and Sentry, so he will be very safe against, for example, Baneling busts, which is something that you normally don't have to account for, but against Scarlett, you kind of do sometimes.
Yeah, man, I have to say, Scarlett doing a great job with the little mind games on the pathing of this probe. The probe gets chased through the center, back home by the Zerglings. And then immediately Astrea says, okay, I'm gonna like make it look like I'm sending it back to mining, but then I'm gonna actually segment it off over to the left-hand side. The Zerglings immediately went back and then over to the left-hand side to intercept the probe a second time and actually forced the Adepts to pull back. So that timing that you were talking about where like the Adepts are really nicely timed to pop out, not only for like defensive purposes, but also push across the map. They actually lose out on a little bit of that time that they could have been effective because they had to pull back for the Zerglings.
Yeah, no doubt. So great moves from Scarlett there with the anticipation. Of course, Astrea not going to fall too far behind because Scarlett still had to make extra Zerglings to contend with this Adept. So she made a total of 10. And they are not going to be very useful as far as like delaying or denying this third base because the Adepts are still intact, right? So ultimately, Astrea not in a terrible position, even making an extra 2 Adepts. Not sure if that's overkill, but I guess if he continues with the Adept production, maybe he can hit. Yeah, he's actually going to make 2 more. Warp in 2 more, and then I expect maybe we can see Glaive started even.
Yeah, a little bit less common of an opening here. It's definitely not unheard of, but ooh, we got Blink coming on out over from Astrea. It's not going to be Glaives, and well, I'm very curious to see when Scarlett's actually going to be able to identify this, because if you see all these Adepts and then you end up moving in with the Overlord eventually to scout, like most people will assume it's going to be Glaives.
Yeah, for sure. It's a beautiful move from Astrea, though. A very cool opening, one that I am mostly unfamiliar with. And he's just going to poke in here, do whatever damage he can with his Adepts. He's going to try to force out Roaches, or even maybe perhaps hoping that Scarlett had already started the Roach Warren. But I mean, the Roaches are nowhere to be found. The Adepts actually canceling the shape, knowing that they can take that fight against the Zerglings. But with more Zerglings spawning here, the Adepts not able to get to those mineral lines or in between will end up falling in the main.
Yeah, 2 Adepts managed to make their way out, but they are beaten and battered. So not necessarily at the very end, the trade that Astrea was hoping for, but definitely maybe giving Scarlett a little bit of a scare there, as it was a fair number of adepts to suddenly decide, yeah, actually, I don't think I do want to leave. I think I am going to just go for your mineral line. But a Warp Prism, Sentries being worked in, Blink finishing up, a lot of Gateways finishing up as well, as I think we're going up to another 6 or so, or going up to 6 now. Astrea's going to have a really nice timing to put some pressure on. And you mentioned there was no roaches out. All those lanes just got cleaned up. Scarlett's still just making drones.
Yeah, I mean, to her credit, up until a certain point, but if Astrea moves out kind of unexpectedly, as he's kind of poking right now, I don't think he should or will commit with this, but he does have Blink and a lot of Force Fields, and I mean, the Warp Prism's here. Maybe Ravi, he does commit. 12 Roaches in production already for Scarlett, already morphing as well some of those Ravagers. This is sort of an open location here. One of the Adepts will finish its Shade, will pull back some of those links, and with the next Warpin, I think Astrea might look to push the issue.
I mean, right now, Astrea has more Stalkers than Roaches are at this point, and these are Stalkers with Blink. Gonna actually do an interesting move command forward to try and snipe off these Ravagers, but I guess just guaranteeing every single Stalker can attack that Ravager. Focus fires them down, so now the Force Fields can be a little bit more effective. There's one Ravager left over. Astrea's cleaning up the creep, and more Ravagers have to be morphed in, going after the eggs as well, as he continues just great unit retention.
Yeah, great unit retention is the best way to put it, I think, Ravi. And the problem for Scarlett is, I mean, Circlings would be amazing here, but the problem is she's very low on Larva as well. Good Force Fields here will shove up a couple of extra Roaches on the side of Scarlett, who is now trying to leave her own creep and try to trade effectively outside of it. But with more Warpins from Astrea and just holding the Concave over this choke, I mean, he's looking incredible so far.
Yeah, I actually love how adamant Astrea is about sniping off these Ravagers, because one of the scariest things when you're doing one of these pushes is that you start to lose a little bit of ground, and now your Warp Prism is maybe in range of a bunch of those Ravagers. Of course, the Bile start coming out, and you just lose the Prism. And honestly, it's not necessarily that the game is over, because there are transitions getting set up, but it can feel really, really bad. But this is because the Ravager count has repeatedly been reduced. I mean, 4 Ravagers been picked off alongside all these Roaches. It feels like Scarlett has actually had a lot of her firepower loss alongside not being able to snipe off the Force Fields. Astrea finally does back off, but would you say that you feel like it was enough damage there from Astrea, Pats?
No doubt. I mean, yeah. I mean, if we look at the resources lost tab, it's clearly very much in Astrea's favor. But beyond that, he stopped Scarlett from droning. He stopped Scarlett from expanding. He made Scarlett kind of stay on low tier tech with this Roach Ravager for a very long time. And then at some point decides to transition. Doesn't linger on too long. This DT nasty as well in the face of Scarlett here. She is not ready. And another one. Beautiful moves from Astrea.
Just excellently done, as now we end up seeing the DT even gets out of there alive before the Overseer shows up. His other DT looking for another angle. And look at that. Scarlett is still moving over to the third base. She does realize that she sees the little blur. Goes after this DT, but not before it swipes another 15 workers total killed.
Wow.
And he only lost one of the 2 DTs, Cats.
He is babysitting every unit. I mean, this game, he is just trying to play those games where you're just playing for the cost efficiency just because you are that good. I mean, it's like he's looking incredible so far and not giving Scarlett any sort of edges so far. Scarlett's going to be nearly maxed on a very low tier army composition. Astrea already has Disruptors on the way. So, I mean, it's going to be very difficult for Scarlett to attack on the side of Astrea. Astrea still keeping presence out on this part of the map, while keeping a lot of his sentries very far back because he can always blink back. Here come the Disruptors! A good Force Field will guarantee some of these Roaches killed.
Yeah, it definitely got a little bit scary there for Scarlett, as if even a few more of those Ravagers or anything had been segmented off, could have been disastrous. But we're starting to see those Disruptors making their way to the forward lines. Have to be careful not to get them too far forward, because you don't want them to just get target fired down. But I have to say, even though Astrea is just doing a really magnificent job in a lot of this game, I think he's put himself in a decent position. Scarlett has been playing this pretty well, but those Disruptor shots are going to hurt.
I mean, Disruptor shots against Roach Ravager of creep. Nasty, right? But what options does Scarlett have? Not many, really, right? Like, she's maxed on Roach Ravager. She has to look for some sort of trades. Astrea has just played a magnificent game so far, and now he's going to start a siege. And Scarlett doesn't even have the Hive ready yet. It's 75% of the way done. Then she has to start getting Vipers. Then she has to get the energy. Then she'll have an answer for Disruptors. But that's just how far behind, how many steps far behind she is from Max Angel right now.
Well, the Disruptors actually left off on their own right now. All of the Disruptor shots go off, but all of the Disruptors are also going to go down, even though they trade for a few units. This was a massive pounce here from Scarlett. Now it's just Stalkers left over. And, I mean, all of these advantages that Astrea had been building for himself, it's not that all of them are necessarily gone, but they certainly are heavily, heavily diminished.
Oh, heavily. So, I mean, the Disruptor count gets heavily reset. This nice counterattack from Astrea is finding drone damage as well, sectioning off just the 2 Zealots to kill drones while the rest of the Zealots are fighting against the Roaches. But you're completely right. That blink was completely unnecessary. He just did not anticipate that Scarlett was already behind him. So he thinks the army of Scarlett is forward. I'm going to blink forward. If she engages, I get to defend myself with those Disruptor shots. But instead, the Disruptors get flanked. And I mean, he should have known that that's a possibility. And like you said, Ravi, I mean, all the effort that he had been putting in to play such a flawless game, a lot of it is gone.
Yeah. Well, 2 more Disruptors are going to be joining the battle, and we do have transitionary stuff being set up over here. Storm is being researched right now. Funny enough, not a lot of anti-air, so the Sport Girl is the only thing that can actually go after that War Prism outside of the Corrosive Vials. But Scarlett looks like she may end up giving up this base as she starts moving further down to help deal with the Zealots. Sent a lot of her units away from that top left-hand base, and kind of understandable. That's a lot of Zealots, but there's no way you can defend this.
No way. And Scarlett is going to tap out on the back of one of those Disruptor shots being massive. The Zealot ran by doing a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And Astrea still clenching it, but it got scary for a little bit there.
Of course, I don't think that Scarlett was wrong to tap out over there because things were going pretty disastrously toward the very, very end of that. But it is funny because Scarlett was only down about 8 supply. And also, another fun fact was we were so focused on all this aggression because it was just constant presence out on the map from Astrea. Astrea also behind this got up to 95 workers, which is a bit of an abnormally high worker count for a Protoss versus a Zerg.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's also what allows him to have that aggressive position and to constantly trade, right? He was playing a Sergi type Protoss just with very good unit retention, like you mentioned earlier. So he was always happy to just, continue to max out, continue to warp in and continue to trade. And that was super cool. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the Vipers were almost out for Scarlett. Like she had 1 or 2 on the way. If she had just defended a little bit better against that Zealot Rambai or not taking a couple of nasty Disruptor shots there towards the end, in the base defense, I think she still has a pretty decent shot, maybe better than she had throughout the majority of that game.
Yeah, I think even in like a worst case I can imagine is, I do feel like, and it was a little bit too late by the time she did tap out because she had already committed to defending that base, but if she had just given up that base, I think, and gone to deal with the Zealot run by instead, she would have lost that base, which would have not been super ideal, but I think she definitely would have been in that game, like you said, with the Vipers coming out and everything, so... a little bit unfortunate there for Scarlett, but that does put Astrea at a 1-0 lead with, outside of the Disruptors getting picked off, a really immaculate game. And here's the thing, Cats. I don't think Scarlett had massive misplays. I don't think there was like these big moments where it's like, why did Scarlett do this? Like, Scarlett was playing really well. It just felt like Astrea was playing even better.
It really did. I mean, he played amazing for a majority of that game. Even the attack and the timing, he hits strong, but he hits offbeat. He hits with an army that is perfect for what Scarlett is going, for what he has forced in a certain sense for Scarlett to go, right? He opens with those 6 Adepts, basically says, hey, go Roaches, go Roaches. Scarlett goes Roaches. Not that Zerg has too many options in the mid game, but then he hits with Blink Stalkers, and just Scarlett didn't have enough Larva, Ravi. Let's do intros here, and we'll continue to talk about that. Very interesting game, but in the top left-hand side of the map, she needs a win in this one. Queen of Blades, Scarlett.
Down in the bottom right-hand side of the map, the man known as Max Angel. He is Astrea, Alpha X.
Yeah. This is a Queen Walk map as well, Ravi, so let's be on the lookout for that. She's one of the best at it, for sure.
Yeah, she can be very, very scary with that stuff. I feel like anything that is like an extreme end of a build, Scarlett is very good with. But I really like what you were saying, because I think you're kind of going over the build and like the way that Astrea opened up, and it really does play to exactly his strengths. Astrea is like this masterful build order crafter, right? He's got his little smith and kind of like irons out all the little flaws and all the little nuances and the little crevices in his, his masterfully crafted sword. And it just works so well where he's basically creating this build order that is forcing out reactions and has that next follow-up and has that next follow-up. I love it. It's one of my favorite things about watching Astrea and just being an Astrea fan.
Yeah, and one of the things that you mentioned earlier, he's very receptive, right? Like he's crafting his build, and as he's crafting it, I'm sure he's consulting with teammates, he's consulting with other Protoss players, he's trying to get feedback, right? And that's one of the smarter things that you can do, is to be smart enough to know that multiple minds are better than one. And as much as he can be the unifying mind and the craftsman in the end, he's never shy and never egoistical enough to think, I know better than everyone else. He's like, tell me what you think of this. Show me the flaws.
Yeah, I will say also, like, I think one of the things I respect the most about Astrea, and this is not like a slight at any other players or anything that, like to basically just say, here's what the standard build order is. I'm going to do that. But I do think it's much more difficult and to me, much more impressive for an innovator to be at the top for more than like a short period of time. Because innovators oftentimes, like, they'll have their innovative period and then they'll kind of fall off as people catch on to things, and like then you have to constantly be innovating, right? Whereas if you're just mechanically really good at executing a well-known strong standard build or things along those lines, like standard play, that's not really a skill that goes away very much. Like you might be at strategic disadvantages sometimes, but like it's kind of a consistent skill you just get to keep. So what makes is Astrea's rise and staying at the top of North America and even on the international scene being competitive so impressive to me is that he's an innovator that has been able to stay at the top for a while.
Yeah, and I think he maintains a beautiful balance between innovation and just kind of like that consistency and like the practice that you need and the work that you need to put in to make those innovations actually work. So he never does anything super crazy. He always like has his own version of stuff that's already out there, but it's, it's super interesting, no less. So yeah, it's really lovely to see. And this time around, he's poking just with the 2 adepts. Let's catch up on the game for a second. I'm not sure if anything too crazy has gone on. There's an Oracle out. But yeah, I think we could talk about Astrea for days, Ravi. We are such huge fans.
Yeah, we got two good people for talking about the Astrea podcast right here. But it is, in fact, just a pretty normal-looking PvZ opening. We got both of the adepts that stayed pretty passive in terms of like how far they were willing to commit. They just got some scouting information, got back home to deal with any lings that would try and go for run-bys. But it was a Stargate opening, and Astrea is going to try and go for the stasis trap. Scarlett, quick to the reaction.
Yeah, and that was a little bit of blunder, I think, from Astrea. I think he wasn't paying attention. He had just queued up the stasis trap while doing other stuff, but the spore wasn't actually ready and the queens weren't actually in position. So if he had been paying a little bit more attention there, he could have gone in and picked up like 2, 3, maybe more drones.
Yeah, maybe a missed opportunity there, as could have gotten a little bit more damage done. But at the end of the day, I guess getting tiny bits of damage and keeping the Oracle healthy is going to be one of the most important things. So I guess I don't mind it too much since he kept his Oracles very, very healthy. He's going to be able to time those together with the Adepts.
Yeah, now Astrea is playing a series as well, so this is pretty cool because he's opening similarly in terms of the Adepts, but not following up with a Blinkstalker follow-up, but instead a potential Immortal all-in even. I mean, he is taking a third, but he is making a lot of Immortals. He is getting some sentries. I say a lot of Immortals, obviously. He's making an Immortal. He's making sentries. I expect that there will be another Immortal to follow suit because we haven't seen something like a Robo Bay or something like that. And the Oracles are still being annoying as well. Oh, War Prism, actually.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to go straight for the Prism. He was busy with the micro there, so he couldn't start that up quite immediately as he would have maybe liked to, but is still making more probes. He's getting past like the 48 or so worker count as he grabs that third. So I think he is planning to saturate that a bit. With more Roaches coming on out, though, and 3 more Overlords getting started up for Scarlett, I do wonder if she's looking to flood and actually be aggressive with these units. So she's already pretty aggressively forward on the map with the Lings. Oh, yeah. Okay. So that answers that.
Yeah, and she's going to go for it. And I really would like to see that other Immortal from Astrea here. I think it would be super helpful. He's going to find out the hard way that the Queens are already halfway or more than halfway through the map. So Astrea is going to have to pull back here. making now shield batteries, 5 at once. I mean, there's 4 shields to buy time, I suppose. The queens are obviously going to be slow, but this is a late spot for Astrea. Good on him that he has already been building some of these units, but also taking up and not really using his rover right now to make more immortals either, but great 4 shields.
Yeah, he's been trying to target fire down these Ravagers, but these transfuses on the Ravager have been keeping them so healthy. The shield batteries are about to finish up, but a lot of the Adepts have died. Oracle's coming on in, and oh man, the Corrosive Vials on the shield batteries, they do manage to knock both of them out, but there's 2 more still left over. These units on the back lines getting quite a bit of value out of them, but Scarlett is an unending flood moving forward.
And damage output is really the issue here. I mean, there's 1 immortal for damage, but there wasn't any or many stalkers up until now. It was mostly just the sentries tickling Ravagers and Roaches and Queens, and the Adepts also tickling that kind of unit, right? If this was a very heavy link type composition, then sure, maybe the Adepts are contributing enough, but without, it's looking very, very grim for Astrea. Great position from Scarlett. I think the Queen knows it. She's going to continue to push on forward, and that means that the mineral line is being threatened. Even if Scarlett doesn't get the win right away, she's looking to be in a fantastic position after surely, definitely taking down this third.
Yeah, third is absolutely dead. There's the recall from Astrea. He did manage to keep a lot of the high-value units alive, but he goes through the recall into the main base, which means he's not entirely in position to help defend his natural before the wall goes down. A lot of pot shots potentially missed out there. Still got transfused energy, so Scarlett's gonna be able to keep these queens alive for a little bit longer. Cybernetic Core being taken out, and I think Astrea's trying to buy time for the Dark Shrine to finish up. Since there's no Overseer over here, is he actually gonna be able to get it up in time? He's losing out a lot of his mining. He's losing out a lot of units now.
Yeah, it looks very difficult. Now Scarlett has started droning up as well. She is up to a few more workers. She's up to 62 with 4 more on the way. So she's looking like she's going to have a very healthy economy. And Astrea, even if he can hold with DTs, will have no third. This natural base will get focused down. And Astrea just will have to tap out. A beautiful timing from Scarlett.
Yeah, very, very well done there by Scarlett. You kind of mentioned Astrea kind of got wind of it a little bit later than he would have wanted. As soon as he saw those queens making their slow journey across the map, I actually heard, I don't even know what he was canceling, but he was canceling some buildings back at home, starting up all those shield batteries and everything. But imagine, Pats, if Astrea had been able to get a little bit earlier wind of that attack, those shield batteries wouldn't have been building for half of that fight. They would have been finished. And he actually would have been able to take some better trades there, or even just warp in maybe fewer sentries, more attacking units for DPS. I think the biggest advantage Scarlett had there was that Astrea caught wind of it so late.
Yeah, but at the same time, it is the map where we expected Queen walks, that we expect that Roaches are very strong. So when I see that Astrea is making an immortal, I'm feeling pretty good for him. But then he kind of stops, goes back for the Observer, then goes back for the War Prism, which gives me vibes of he wants to be harassy more than aggressive, because you're right, he was still making probes and the likes, right? And he doesn't really have like a massive army or something like that. So, I mean, he was potentially going to hit a timing once he had a lot of sentry energy and, you know, maybe pops up a couple more immortals or something down the line. But it seemed a little bit risky to be so fragile, I guess, in his army composition whilst not getting enough information there. Especially seeing as he had so many sentries, right? Like he should have potentially had more hallucinations and being more on top of things.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. And he had the 2 oracles still alive as well. So it is pretty unfortunate that it took him so long to actually scout that out, because you sort of hope always, like, if you have the oracles, and he was being active with them as well. It's not like he was just leaving the oracles at home and that's why he didn't get any vision. He had them around the map. He was doing harassment and stuff with them, but maybe just kind of like that one little moment where he pulled the oracles away. Scarlett did a great job of maybe doing some intentional moves there to also hide some of the move outs and stuff there. So either way, does mean that Scarlett puts a win on the board, and we have a tied up series 1-1 before we move into Blackburn. Always an interesting PvZ map.
Yeah, it should be. And I think we had a very interesting CVP between these two actually last time around as well. So let's see if we can get a good game out of this one. And we are all loaded in. So spawning in the bottom right hand side of the map, the red Cirque player for the Shopify Rebellion, it is Scarlett.
Over here in the bottom left-hand side of the map, we have the blue Protoss player from Alpha X Esports. He is Astrea.
A great game one. The game two, I mean, we also can't discredit Scarlett. We were saying it before the game. She's one of the very best when it comes to sharp timings, when it comes to queen walks, when it comes to anything that requires someone to be very decisive, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna commit to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Scarlett is scary good at basically capitalizing exactly what you just described. Being decisive, whether it be about a timing with an all-in, or if it's just being extremely perfect and decisive about, I'm going to turn this into a macro game. We've seen many times Scarlett versus Neeb also descend into Scarlett being very decisive about saying, I'm okay with this going for 50 minutes, and just early on is like, yeah, here's my score force. I'm getting started on this and gearing up for the cost efficiency game. The fact that she's able to make those decisions, and oftentimes correct decisions, is what makes her such a scary player.
Yeah, I think we saw something like that last season as well in Scarlett versus Neeb, where she just like her production tab, when she identified, okay, we're going later, was just every upgrade ever, right? And like the Spire and like only drones. And I mean, that is the mark of a very strong Zerg player. That is utilizing your tools to the maximum of their potential, right? Like just min-maxing. And if you have the ability to min-max with enough information that you know your opponent has the potential to do only this or that, but not anything in between, right? Like they're either going to be aggressive or they're not, and then you can exploit that, then that is just the mark of a great Zerg.
Yeah, an experienced Zerg player as well. So I am interested to see where things go on Blackburn. This is definitely as I mentioned before, like a interesting PvZ map, because I think the gold base has created all sorts of weirdness. Just the pathway through that bottom center has created all sorts of interesting decisions. And I mean, I think I've seen a handful of queen walks on this map too, although maybe a little less common, but also a little bit less common is how many lings Scarlett is making right now.
Yeah, actually, so we'll have to wait and see what she plans with that. The speed's not ready yet. Yeah, creep spread can be very important on this map as well, as far as like the top hand side of the map as well, like to cover that gold base. Killing rocks can be really important also to access that gold base. And Scarlett being a more timing oriented, or I'm sorry, Astrea sometimes being a more timing oriented, or at least the type of player that likes to be out on the map with basic units early on, as in this matchup. That is a lot of links though.
Yeah,
Ravi.
she's all inning. But I'm actually really worried right now. Astrea has a sentry, but it's clearly not held position or in place. There's a stalker that just popped out though, so has the full wall going as long as he holds positions those units. And oh my god, he moved away from the wall. Oh, the force field saves the day though. That's a very early force field to have to use.
Exactly.
Though.
Yeah, exactly. It saves the day, but that's his force field. Luckily for him, there's no banelings. Can the units actually plug this hole? Astrea's gonna try his darnest, and I mean, this actually kind of works in that Scarlett doesn't really have surface area on either unit. Like one link can attack either unit at once. She's pushing in the units as best as she can. Obviously, Adepts are gonna be fantastic against Zerglings if they can get on the other side. One of them will be trapped with this Zerglings, but with 3 on the other side, this is looking like a hold for Astrea.
Yeah, I mean, Scarlett is going to try and right-click down the Cybernetic Pro, but she's not actually going to be able to get it in time. There's even a shield battery there. And guys, this was the most all-in of all-ins. Scarlett knows it, and it did not work out. Astrea